All right, what's up, everybody? This is the Detroit Lions News Podcast. We're posting on the YouTube page for more news. So every time we're going to get news, we're going to post it on here, not JC Sports Detroit. So stay tuned to that. But the Detroit Lions have hired Drew Petzing, who is he will be their new offensive coordinator. It's from Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter. Um, everyone, Tom Pelissaro, everyone had the news, and the reality of the situation is this. Um, there's a lot of Lions fans and their reactions. Who is this good? Is this Ben Johnson 2.0 or are we cooked? Um, Today we're going to break down who Drew Petzing is, what his offense is like, why this hire matters, and why I actually think this is a sneaky good move for Detroit. Now, let's go back. Let's go back. If you have a comment, are you happy with the Drew Petzing as OC or do you hate it and why? Let's get into it in the comments. Let me know below and we'll talk about it below. So here's the Detroit Lions. Here's a headline. Detroit Lions hire Drew Petzing as the offensive coordinator, reported by Adam Schefter, E. Rapport, and it's already buzzing across Lions Twitter and X. This will be the new Detroit Lions play caller. This guy has taken over one of the best offenses in the NFL. And that's the key part here. He's taking over an offense that he doesn't have to fix. This isn't a broken offense. This was a top 5 offense. It doesn't need an overhaul. It needs just a guy who could call plays. Now, we're not clear on what he could do and how he could drive the Ferrari, but this is a Ferrari type offense. You're maintaining an elite offense, and you could possibly evolve it in the process. And that's the part about this. Drew Petzing is going to be an interesting guy from that standpoint. When you talk about Drew Petzing as the play caller, don't worry, you're not alone. I was the same way when he was, but I looked at the statistics, and the statistics bear it out that Drew Petzing could potentially be a really good hire. So my first thought was, on the Lions' new offensive coordinator, Drew Petzing. But let's take a step back for a minute. When we take a step back, this is a guy who has a tight ends background, a quarterback development influence background, heavy play action and run game foundation, and a pro style structure that fits Detroit and Jared Goff. And the one detail I loved from Albert Breer on Twitter was Petzing and the Lions run game coordinator Hank Fraley coached together in Minnesota from 2014 to 2016. The run game coordinator for the Detroit Lions is Hank Fraley. So that's already a connection there, and that goes into a connection. Jeff Risdon, who works is the Detroit Lions podcast, which I love the Detroit Lions podcast. They do a great work. He even said it. He's a guy who likes to listen and evolve. And I think that's the major sticking point with any other coach. There's a lot of coaches that don't want to evolve. They want to do this and they want to do that. That's a key sticking point. When we look at Drew Petzing about his offense, you got to look deeper, because when you look at the Arizona situation, it wasn't a situation like Detroit. You didn't have a situation like Detroit. You had Kyler Murray missing time, then returning. Jacoby Brissett was starting games, a rough offensive line. And let's be real, the weapons that do not compare to Detroit in any other way. And they still average 325 yards per game. That's more than Kansas City, Tampa Bay, the Commanders, the Saints, the Eagles, the Steelers, the Dolphins, and Carolina Panthers. And I think a couple of those teams you would say are pretty damn good teams. Didn't come out to fruition, but Arizona was nowhere near the level of a Philadelphia, of a Miami, of a Carolina, of a Washington Commanders, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Kansas City Chiefs. No way. There's no way you would say that is the case. And then you look at it like this. Now imagine that situation with a guy like Jared Goff, a guy like Amon-Ra, a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, and right now for Monty, but Monty could be on their way out, at LaPorta, and potentially still a top 10 offensive line, potentially, if they make some improvements. The real breakdown here is, in Arizona under Petzing, their explosive play rate was 5.3. That's higher than teams like Houston, Philly, 49ers, and Colts. Okay? Those were all good teams, and those were all good offenses. And the 49ers, I know they dealt with injuries, but still, to have 5.3 yards per play with that offense is pretty astounding. I mean, explosive play rate. Their yards per play rate it's solid. It wasn't great, but with the talent gap that they had, they were still 5.2. And if you think about what the Lions struggled with last year, they struggled on third down. The Cardinals last year were 72%. 72%. The Detroit Lions were 73%. So you're telling me the scheme already produces high conversion situations. That's important because third down offense is about design, quarterback comfort, and spacing. And Detroit already thrives there. Petzing kind of fits that. And what the offense is going to look like. Here's the part Lions fans should get excited about. Petzing's offense is built on heavy run game, heavy play action, 2 tight end usage, and scheming the ball to playmakers. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Because Detroit wants to punch you in the mouth. That's not some spread it out and pray offense. This is a run, play action, matchups, misdirection, tight end involvement, and efficient quarterback play. In other words, that fits the Detroit Lions in every single word of the situation. That is what the Detroit Lions are trying to do. And, Ben Johnson and Drew Petzing have a history together. Is Drew Petzing Ben Johnson 2.0? No, nobody is Ben Johnson, but could he be a guy who keeps into the offense elite and adds his own wrinkles? Absolutely. Absolutely. Of course. The reason Ben Johnson was special because he mixed creativity, timing, deception, and aggression. What Petzing brings is structure, run game foundation, tight end influence, and efficiency. If Petzing can combine that structure with Detroit's aggressiveness, the Lions offense still could be top 5 in the NFL. And I think there's a reason why this is a smart hire from the Detroit Lions perspective. Here's why I think Dan Campbell made this move. Continuity. The Lions offense was elite this year. It was. Even with the bad offensive line, it was still a top 5 in points, top 5 in yards per play. You don't reinvent that, okay? The fit with Fraley and the offensive line, the Fraley connection matters a lot because Fraley is the run game coordinator for the Detroit Lions. That matters a lot when you talk about coming into a situation, knowing the coaches that you're coming into the situation with. That's important. Culture. The Lions want coaches who match their identity, tough, physical, run first, and disciplined. This matches it. And the QB fit, lastly, is the QB fit. Jared Goff in play action with rhythm passing, that's his comfort zone. Play action pass, get him out in space. This isn't changing the Detroit offense. It's protecting what already works pretty much. That's the most important part. When Johnny Morton came into this situation last year, we had no stats to go off. We had no continuity to go off. We just said, oh, he was a passing game coordinator for the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos pass game was good. But we all knew, even I said it on the podcast multiple times, Johnny Morton came into a situation where he was going to be calling plays. We know in Denver, he did not call plays. It was Sean Payton who called plays. That's the difference from this because Drew Petzing actually called plays. So he's experienced. He comes from a very terrible organization in the Arizona Cardinals who have nowhere near the talent the Detroit Lions have. So this could really match up with the Detroit Lions. And this is my take on it. If Petzing is who I think he is, the Lions will remain a top offense in the NFL. And I'll go further. If the defense improves at all, if they just add one more pass rusher and they add some depth to the pass rush and they add a corner to the defense, they add a safety, they add fundamental depth. Detroit is not just a contender next year. They will be a Super Bowl contender next year. And that's why I am interested what other people think. What do you think? I want to hear from you. What grade do you give the Detroit Lions on this hire right now? And tell me why. Are you hyped because of it's a scheme fit, or are you disappointed because it wasn't a big flashy name like Mike McDaniel? Here's one more thing. Do you think the Lions still add another voice, like a passing game assistant? That could be obviously something that could happen. Now, I want you to let me know in the comments what you want me to do. If you want me to follow up further, what Drew Petzing's offense means for Jared Goff, what it means for Gibbs, LaPorta, ASB, Amon-Ra, St.Brown, and top 5 play concepts that Petzing will bring to Detroit. Smash the subscribe button on the Detroit Lions News podcast. We will have a podcast Thursday. James will be on the podcast. We will talk about this. We will also break down quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. I'm sure this will play into the role. This is perfect timing for our positional breakdowns. But the Lions hired Drew Petzing, and I think it's a good hire for the Detroit Lions. I really think it's a good hire for them. And I think that this is more or less going to give them continuity and fix what doesn't need to be fixed. It just needs to be revamped, and there needs to be wrinkles thrown in. This offense was good last year with a kind of an offensive line in turmoil. They're going to get better there, but this is the situation that the Lions find themselves in. And yes, it's not a Mike McDaniel name, but in my opinion, this could fit a lot better than Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel obviously has overtures out there like Tampa, where he could potentially be the coach in waiting. Mike Kafka wasn't really a name that I was thrilled about. Zach Robinson was a name I was okay about, but wasn't really thrilled about that either. What I am thrilled about with Drew Petzing is this. He does have an explosive play rate. And when we look at some of the statistics, he is just 2023 EPA per rush, 4th. Rushing success rate was 8th. Rushing success rate in 2025 with a lot of injuries, 15th. 9th in 2024. There is opportunity for the Detroit Lions to get better. Drew Petzing could present an opportunity where they get better in the margins, but it shows on the field. And that's the most important part. I don't care about a flashy name. That is not important to me. I do not care about the flashy name. I care about the fit. And does it fit with the Detroit Lions? We will talk about this and more on the Detroit Lions News Podcast Thursday at 6. Join us then for the positional breakdown. We will also be talking about this offensive coordinator hire with James. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video. And as always, subscribe to the channel for more if you want more Detroit Lions news here on the Detroit Lions News Podcast YouTube page. That is the official page of the Detroit Lions News Podcast. Thank you for watching. Comment below what you think. And we'll see you in the next video as we talk more Detroit Lions football here on the Detroit Lions News Podcast.